On the 33rd day of Donald Trump's war with Iran, he addressed the nation about his administration's goals in that war. There were a lot of questions about what we might hear tonight. For example, was Trump getting ready to pull American forces out? Would he lay out an endgame for the war? Or even make a case for putting boots on the ground? Instead, we got kind of the same talking points that we've been hearing from Donald Trump since this war began. Listen.
In these past 4 weeks, our armed forces have delivered swift, decisive, overwhelming victories on the battlefield. Victories like few people have ever seen before. Tonight, Iran's Navy is gone. Their Air Force is in ruins. Their leaders, most of them terrorist regime they led, are now dead. We are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. In the meantime, discussions are ongoing.
So one thing is very clear. Donald Trump knows that high gas prices are a major problem for him. And there was little acknowledgement of the economic pain being caused by his war. Tonight, we heard him try to shift the blame for those escalating prices that you are paying.
Many Americans have been concerned to see the recent rise in gasoline prices here at home. This short-term increase has been entirely the result of the Iranian regime launching deranged terror attacks against commercial oil tankers in neighboring countries that have nothing to do with the conflict. And in any event, when this conflict is over, the Strait will open up naturally. It'll just open up naturally.
Let's be clear about a few things here. The Strait of Hormuz was open before Trump started this war. It is Trump's war that is the reason that the Strait is closed now. And no matter what Trump says, Iranian officials have said that the Strait will not reopen for business as usual when this war is over. Remember, Donald Trump and his team did not try to build a public case for the war in the weeks and months before they started it, and Trump waited until almost 5 weeks into the war to address the nation on live television about it. With all of that, let's bring in our nightcap. Hayes Brown, writer and editor for MS Now Daily. Ron Insana, veteran financial journalist and publisher of The Message of the Markets on Substack. Basil Smikle, Democratic strategist and former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party. He is now an MS Now political analyst and Columbia University professor. And Michael McFaul, former U.S. ambassador to Russia and MS Now international affairs analyst. Michael, I want to start with you. What was your reaction to what we heard from Trump? And what do you think global leaders will take away from his remarks?
So for me, there were two big takeaways. One was about nuclear weapons and the nuclear program. The president I'm going to try to use diplomatic language here, but he used disinformation to describe what President Obama, who I work for, did with regard to denying Iran a nuclear weapon. And he kind of made it sound like this war was to deny them a nuclear weapon. But let's be crystal clear. All American presidents, Democrats, Republicans, Bush, Biden, Obama, Trump, everybody agrees Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. The question that we've disagreed about is how to achieve that objective. We used coercive diplomacy, and we denied Iran a nuclear weapon and a nuclear-grade enrichment of their uranium for 15 years, set at 3.67%. That's what we did. Trump tore it up. And then today, it's at 60%, the same almost weapons-grade nuclear materials, and that's still there even after this war. So that jujitsu that he played, with Obama, it would have been all these weapons, and I'm the one that denied it, is completely false. The second big takeaway is he's bringing back much more modest goals and objectives, defining what he wants to achieve here, destroying their Navy, destroying their Air Force, destroying their missiles. He's not talking about opening up the Strait of Hormuz. That's just going to happen organically, as he said. And he's not talking about regime change. He claims he already did it, even though it's a theocratic dictatorship today, as it was a month before. But he's trying to, I think, make this about a smaller set of objectives so that he can declare victory in the coming weeks.
So, Hayes, this was billed as a new address to the nation, but it kind of sounded like he was just reciting many of his social media posts that we've already seen. What, if anything, did you hear that was new in tonight's speech?
Aside from his extremely tired tone, there was not much to hear that was new from him. Everything that he said was clearly about Trump does a thing when he speaks on serious policy issues where he never wants to pin himself down to an exact position. And so he'll just say whatever he thinks the audience wants to hear. He'll say things like the war will be wrapping up shortly and it'll be all over soon because he knows that oil investors want to hear that. And he wants to bring down gas prices. But he'll also say we're going to bomb them back to the Stone Age because he wants his MAGA base who are turning on him over this. He still wants to sound tough to them. He still wants to sound like he's in control of the situation. And so in trying to always make it so that there is no such thing as a loss for him, he will say whatever it takes to try to convince his audience, oh, the thing that you want to hear is exactly what's happening.
So, Basil, to that point, if he was trying to say things that he thought his audience wanted to hear, he did spend a lot of time bragging about his accomplishments, not a lot of time talking about the loss of life, either here or abroad, for that matter. What do you think voters actually heard in his remarks tonight?
Well, I think, and you make great points that I want to pick up on, because I do think he has multiple audiences here. None of them are Democrats, right?
Okay.
Multiple audiences. One audience is the set of investors, is Wall Street, all the folks that have, are looking at the stock market every day and wondering what's coming out there, because he wants to find a way to assure them that it is going to finish quickly. But there is a very clear message to his Republican base. Mind you, in all of the polling, all of his Republican base is still with him. So the message to that base is we're going to bomb the hell out of these people. And he will continue to say that. The group that he should be talking to and isn't are independents.
I was just going to ask, yeah.
Are independents, because they are leaving him in droves. Latinos are leaving him. Young men who supported him are leaving him. He has done by the way, young men who would be going to fight if there was ever a draft, right? He's not speaking to any of those individuals or any of those groups. And it does leave room for Democrats to do that. However, he could have done a lot outside of his fatigue, or whatever that he did tonight, to be able to address low energy, to be able to address them, and he did nothing toward that end. And he did nothing to help congressional Republicans that might want to stand with him. He did nothing to protect the members of his party in an election year, in a very important election year. And I would imagine congressional Republicans are scratching their heads saying, what is this now? What are we doing here?
So, Ron, what do you think the business community, small businesses, CEOs of big companies, what do you think they heard in tonight's comments?
Well, to start with, Wall Street heard what it didn't want to hear. Said this is going to go for another 2 or 3 weeks. But he also threatened what would be the equivalent of war crimes hitting civilian infrastructure, energy grids, so on and so forth. So Dow futures are down 400 points. Oil's up almost $4 a barrel, retracing some of the gains that we've seen in the last 48 hours. And then when you think of the other things that people don't talk about nearly as much as oil or liquefied natural gas, fertilizer deliveries are going to go wanting very, very soon. Some of the deliveries of energy products, the final deliveries have just hit the shores of other countries, which means they're not going to get anything now for several months, whether that's fertilizer, whether that's oil, whether that's LNG,
Helium,
helium to make semiconductors.
Yeah, to make